So as I demonstrated over at the iron, I went ahead and pressed under, a half an inch on the bottom edge of all the waistbands. And so now we're going to go ahead and attach them to the garment. And what I would like you to do is put the right sides together. So waistband, garment. And you can measure over about 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to use my little seam gauge here, put it on 5/8. Go from the edge. And you can give yourself a little mark if you like with a little piece of chalk, or you can just kind of hold it with your finger like so. You're going to line that up so that there's 5/8 of an inch hanging off of the waist, or the waistband hanging beyond right there of the garment, and then there'll be a couple inches over here. So just like so. And go ahead and put 1 or 2 pins in to hold that in place. And then you're going to go ahead and stitch just from where the garment is here on 5/8 all the way down to where the garment ends. So I'm going to back stitch, guide right along that 5/8 line, get to the end of where the garment is, go ahead and back stitch there, and then you're done with that. To my cutter here. Threads, and I always go right back to my starting threads and get rid of those so they're completely clean. Alright, so that one's attached like so, right sides together, and I'm going to continue that with the other 3 samples. So right side up of the waistband, garment side down, use your seam gauge, double check that you're 5/8 of an inch there. Go ahead and put a pin or 2 in to hold that in place. Like so. Get my threads to the back, start out. Stitch at 5/8. Back stitch here. And trim that thread right up there. Same with this side. So, and then we're going to do it to the last one. Five-eighths of an inch there. And if you feel more comfortable, put your pins in. It's kind of a small piece, so I don't feel like it's going to move a whole lot. So, and go and cut these little guys. There. And then we have those like so. All right. And then our next step is to basically create the waistband. Now, typically you would trim this down a little bit in size. So let me grab my big scissors, and I'm going to trim this all the way down to about 1/4 of an inch. Remember, never get too crazy when you're trimming. And we're doing this just to reduce the bulk that's going on in here. All right. And then this seam will eventually be up like so. All right. And what you're going to take, and this is where people get confused on their pattern directions, and I think once you do it, you'll get the hang of it. But you're going to fold this now right sides together. So I have my garment here, my waistband here, my seam is pushed upward underneath here, and then this is our press stitch that we already pressed, and we're going to fold that just like so. Now we're going to be doing 3 different finishing techniques, so I will tell you that we kind of want to cheat this maybe, well, 3 different ways. One of them, you want it to actually be a little bit longer than where the seam is here, so you want to pull it maybe just a hair longer. The other 2 can be right even with it. because we're doing a top stitch and a hand stitch on that. So I'm going to pull these so they're all even right there. And we want to stitch right up from where this would be a finished edge. So typically, you know, we're pretending this is a garment. This would be like the end of the zipper edge. So you'd be coming straight up from that edge there. And you can sew it from one direction or the other, but this is 5/8 of an inch. Like so. All right. So that is finishing that little edge there. And to get rid of this extra bulk, I want to trim this down. So I'm going to trim it down to 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm also going to trim just a little bit of that corner away. I don't want to go too close to my stitch, but just a little bit around away from there. And then I'll get rid of a little of this extra thickness going on down there. It's got pretty bulky because it's got a lot of layers right there. So what you can see is that this is eventually going to turn right side out. And that would be part of the waistband of where it's going to fold back and, you know, hook onto a hook and eye, or however your garment closes up. All right, so I'm going to flip that back wrong side out so we can continue over to this other side. And you're going to do this to all 3 pieces that you've done, 3 little samples. Remember, it's the very last step that's going to change. So this was lining up, this fold lines up right perfect with that little stitched edge. So this one's a little trickier. You're just going to unfold this. Okay, so I lined up fold to basically where that seam is, right like that. Unfold it, and this stitch is going to come from where this fabric ends here, and I'm going to stitch right in that fold ditch that I have there. And it should be about the 5/8, but we've done some trimming, so things could be a little bit different. So we're going to go right along this little press stitch. And remember, a lot of the machines have the 5/8 going the other direction. And we learned that when we did our pivoting. Try to get that thread out of there. So when I get to my little line that says 5/8 the other way, I'm going to make sure my needle's down, and then I'm going to pivot, and then I should be on 5/8 coming up the other direction. And then back stitch here. Raise my needle back up. Pull that. Cut your threads like so. And I know what I normally do. I usually do sew it from this side. See how I got off a little bit there? So if I had sewn it from this side, I would have seen that, and I could have just gone straight from where I left off there and continued down. Probably not going to be a big deal, but I might pop those stitches out and redo that. So we'll do that on the other side. And then after this step, you're just going to trim this up. So get rid of this, get rid of this. Make this as light as you can, because all this extra seam allowance has to go inside this waistband. So I'm going to even trim this down here like that. Get rid of that. Oops. Get off there. Like so. All right. That right there is really bothering me, so I definitely would pop those stitches out and go back and clean that up. All right, so but then at this point, what you do is you can kind of put your thumb inside there and poke that casing and this corner all the way out. All right, now it looks like a mess on that side, but we'll get there because we have these fun little tools that kind of go in there. They'll go in there and kind of push around and pop those out. Right now I'm just going to grab my scissors and gently kind of poke with them. You got a little interfacing, so it's kind of strong. All right, and you get a nice curve point on that side. This side's already pretty good, like that. All right, so that is a waistband from the right side of your fabric. Looks pretty good, huh? Kind of neat and clean. But now we have to make it close down on this side. So this is where I want you to get all 3 of your waistbands to this point, and then I'll do all the finishing techniques on one video. So do what we just did there on the other two. I'll continue on here a little bit, and you guys can fast forward it if you want, if you feel good. If not, watch to the next one, and we'll just keep learning this over and over. So on this is seam. I got to go back and trim this seam down because it's a little on the big side. And take it down to about 1/4 of an inch and go ahead and go all the way to the end of the waistband. Get rid of those pieces. Finger press this upward like so. Right sides are up right now. Folding right sides together. And this is where we're going to sew 5/8 here, and it should be coming straight up from the edge. I know when you're constructing a garment, and you know, in a perfect world it all ends up that way, but I've made waistbands on pants and stuff that this ends up just being a tiny little seam. But as long as you can create a seam, then you can create that finished edge. If you don't have that seam, I've seen students, their waistband's a little small, or they don't realize they have to actually have enough fabric hanging off their fabric where their zipper is to create this, and they end up with this raw edge. And there's nothing you can do about that. Once the fabric's gone, it's gone, right? So, that side. All right, let me do this one a little better than I did the last one. So I want that. Sorry, I keep flipping it around on you guys. I know that's annoying. I want to stay lined up where I am there and fold that down. From this side, it kind of held it nicely. And to stay on 5/8, I'm going to start this direction. Come on down till I'm 5/8 going the other way. I remember to put my needle in the down position. Pivot, and then come right over to where we left off this stitching right here. You really don't want to overlap it, so I'm going to go right back, needle back up, and then I close that up nicely, huh? That one looks a little better than my first one, you know. Sewing. I do these, you know, every few years when I'm teaching the class, so bear with me. All right, trim some of this up. We've got some extra fabric here I don't want. Remember, all that you saw from the first one, it all ends up inside this, inside of here. So any of these corners that you can kind of get rid of some of the bulkiness right there, just makes them turn out so much nicer and be a little bit easier to handle. So my thumb's gonna go in there, poke that out, I have actually a nifty little tool. It's part of a ruler. It goes in and has a point on it, and you can push against these seams really nicely. But unfortunately, it's not within my grasp at the moment, so I do not have it handy. All right, get that thread off there so you can see the seam's going to go up inside there, and this is going to close up again in one of our 3 different ways. So that is that one from the wrong side, that from the right side. And one more. If you haven't got it yet, you're going to get it on this one for sure. Get my big scissors out of there. Even though I'm going to need my big scissors right now. Trim this guy down. Okay, get rid of that. Finger press that seam upward. We're just finger pressing. You could go to the iron and do this if you wanted to continue that along like that. Finger pressing is good enough on that. Okay, on this last one though, I'm going to pull it down a little bit longer. So for you guys that hung in there and keep watching the video, I'm going to have it just be a hair longer. See how that is? It's going to be the one that we do the stitch in the ditch sample. It's getting to be a long video, 15 minutes long already. Sorry about that. Okay, there. Go to the other side here, and remember this one's a little bit longer, so that means my 2 little fold lines right here aren't going to be exactly the same, but that's okay. You will see. You'll benefit